Hi, I'm Randy Nesse from the Arizona State University Center for Evolutionary Medicine. My guest today is Frederik Nijhout from Duke University. He's also part of the Triangle Center for Evolutionary Medicine, one of our partners. We're so glad you're with us here today. You got going first studying butterfly wings, and now we have you here talking about how your research can help us understand disease.
Yes, indeed.
How can we make that connection?
How do we make that connection? Well, what I really got interested in early on is how you make the connection between genes and traits, genotype and phenotype.
What's a phenotype?
A phenotype is any trait you would like to think
like
about.
brown hair,
having two eyes, brown hair,
wet or wax or dry or wax,
fingernails, yes, 2 legs or 4 legs.
Okay.
And what I was interested in is a system in which you could have the entire causal chain of events between a mutation in a gene, for instance, and how that affects the change in that trait.
So everybody talks about genes causing disease.
Yes.
Pretty straightforward, right?
Yes.
Is it that
It's
straightforward?
horribly complex.
It's horribly complex.
And in fact, that metaphor of gene 4 is something that has really, I think, inhibited a lot of research in a lot of thinking.
So should we make that kind of an alert phrase? Anybody sometimes says gene 4, everybody's ears should perk up and say,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What should people do when they hear gene 4?
They should be immediately suspicious that the person actually may not know everything that they're talking about.
Uh-huh. So,
I'll be happy to say why.
Please do.
Okay. So we know what genes are for. We actually do know what genes are for. We've known this for a very long time. Genes are for coding the sequence of amino acids and proteins. That is all they do. Everything else that is a result of that is because things that proteins do, how proteins interact with each other, how they interact with other things in a cell, how cells interact with each other, how tissues interact to form wholes, how hormones are secreted that affect the properties of bone development or muscle development.
So what about the idea
so
that one gene does one thing? Does one gene do one thing?
No, it doesn't. One gene codes for one kind of protein.
So I've been especially interested in serotonin and the number of varieties of serotonin receptors, 20 some at this point. And when I was in medical school, I was taught that serotonin was the sleep hormone.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, we were learning that it actually influences the tone of the vascular system. And then after that, we learned that it influenced gastrointestinal motility. And then Prozac came out. And everybody started saying, oh, serotonin is a depression or antidepressant hormone and all the rest. How should we be thinking about serotonin?
Well, let's start with those 20 different receptors. I mean, those 20 different receptors don't all occur in the same tissue. Right? So each tissue will have 1 or 2 of these kinds of receptors in it. When it is hit by serotonin, what is downstream of that receptor, in other words, how a cell responds to a signal that that receptor receives, is going to be specific to that cell. It's not going to be a property of the serotonin. All the serotonin is doing is turning the cell on or off.
So let's go on in just a moment and talk about how these systems evolve.